I finally caved. I have hopped on board the AirPods train. After much deliberation, I decided to order them.
Nice.
And they're going to get here Sunday, so we're recording on Friday, January 4th. So on our next episode, I will report back and discuss my findings.
Yeah.
I have high hopes because I've seen all the reviews. I was hesitant at first because I wasn't sure when the second generation of them would come out, but it's no sure thing. I don't even know what the improvements will be. I think it's worth it just to have them because to sound like Johnny Ive, the listening experience is what I really want them for. So I think I'm going to enjoy them while I have them, and even if new ones come out in like 5 months, I'll still have my current ones and I'll like them, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll talk about those next time.
Cool.
Just wanted to mention that. So, as I mentioned, we are recording on Friday, January 4th. I am Uluru, and I'm here with my co-host. What's your name, co-host?
Jason.
All right, yeah, I'm here with my co-host, claims to be named Jason, and we are here on episode 3 of The Flock. Are you surprised we made it this far?
I'm kind of glad we've actually made it to doing like weekly, although this is only the first one that we've made like within like the week.
Yeah.
So
it's our
hopefully
first
we can keep
podcast
that going.
Of 2000. Sorry, say that again. I interrupted you.
Hopefully we can keep that going.
Oh yeah, our first episode of 2019. Hopefully, I hope that next week we will have an episode as well.
Yeah.
So, what's this thing that's happening this week?
CES.
It's called like CES or something?
Yeah. Although not many people are probably going, as have years past.
And the ones who are going are not very enthusiastic about it. I've been reading some product pitches that have been sent in emails to a few journalists, and they're pretty comical. Like a smart toilet with Alexa built in. And the toilet had speakers, and it also had some lights that could change color.
Oh yeah, I glanced over that like 10 minutes ago.
It's CES is pretty weird these days. I'm expecting to see a lot of phones with hole punch displays.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So are you sad that you're not going to CES?
Not really.
Is anyone? I think the people who aren't going are relieved.
Yeah.
Yeah, and because we're Apple sheep, we aren't that interested in the announcements because there aren't any Apple things happening at CES. Speaking of Apple things, what are some Apple things that you saw over the past couple weeks or week? Yeah, week, because we recorded last week. We only have a week of news to cover.
Wow.
Anyway, what are some recent stories that you have seen?
Well, their stock is going way down this week.
Oh, yeah.
Super discounted.
The stock is cheaper than AirPods right now.
You should have bought an Apple stock instead.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, and then it would. I kind of expected it would go back up. I don't know.
We'll see.
I'm hopeful, at least. I'm optimistic. So, what do you think obviously Apple stock is going down because Apple revised its guidance from like 89 to 93 billion down to 84 billion. The revenue estimates. So, they cited reasons for this, including lower than expected iPhone upgrades. So it's our job to figure out why they had lower than expected iPhone upgrades. So, what do you think?
I think it's kind of their fault because they made such good devices for the past, whenever the 6 came out. Because that was like the first like really good one that like you didn't have to really upgrade from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is kind of the fault of older devices still being fine for most people.
Yeah.
I think that it's important to note that it's not just Apple's problem. It's not because Apple has some lack of innovation as opposed to the rest of the smartphone market. The entire market has been slowing down since sometime last year or maybe even before.
Yeah.
And nobody should expect massive sales growth anymore.
Yeah. Like look at the Samsung. No one's really buying the S9 if they already have the S8 because they're like
the
basically
S9
the same
I think
thing.
had some pretty tepid demand for that. Yeah. So So I think that it's a mix of two things, and the two things boil down to one common theme, which is that the price to value ratio is not what it used to be. So they can fix this by doing one of two things. They can charge less for the same product, and then the price to value ratio goes up, or they can charge the same for a better product, make the existing products better at the same price slots, and that would also make the price to value ratio go up. I think that the former is what they should do. I think they should drop prices or make products that are less good and less valuable, because the iPhone XR was clearly intended to drive upgrades from like the iPhone 6, 6S, 7, etc. So, and it doesn't appear to be doing that. I think the XR is the one that seems to be underperforming because A, they've been marketing it pretty heavily, and B, that's the one they probably had the highest expectations for. So I think that in order to achieve the XR's actual goal, they need to go cheaper. They need to go back to like $649, which used to be the flagship price.
Yeah.
That's sort of the sweet spot, I think. And I think if they had a $649 variant of the XR, then that would solve a lot of their problems. I don't think it would be the magic solution, but what do you think?
Yeah, I think that would definitely help boost sales for the XR.
Yeah.
Because $100 more for a phone is quite a lot.
Yeah, like most people paid about $649 for their current phone, most iPhone users probably, and they just don't want to pay $749 for their next phone, period, no matter how good it is. So I don't think the solution of increasing the value of the product and charging the same for it is going to help Apple that much. People just don't want to pay $749, end of story.
Yeah.
So what do you think a $649 iPhone should look like? Like what the form factor and design and all that would be?
I would hope pretty similar to what they have now. Probably minus a few things. Maybe like a slightly less, like, hold on, let me think of the word. Less good of a screen.
Yeah.
It's the best thing I can think of right now. Probably that. And then maybe not really a downgrade on the camera, but like not spend quite as much there. And maybe slightly cheaper materials. Not like completely downgrade it, like that it's a bad camera, but like not like do like a major overhaul.
I think it's actually way simpler than that. I think, so they went from the dual camera to the single camera for the XR. I think they should go from a single camera to no camera. I think that would solve all the problems. All your stuff about different materials, that's great. But I think the easiest thing is just no camera. You can turn the phone around and use the selfie camera to take pictures.
Everyone knows that's the better
the solution
camera.
is really simple. Apple tends to charge $100 more for the larger variant of any iPhone. I think that's how it's been for any time they've had two sizes.
Yeah.
So if they just made a smaller version of the XR, they could charge $100 less for it. And
Yeah.
boom, you've got a $649 phone. So I think like a 5.5-inch screen is what makes sense. I think someone said that was how it would be based on the scaling of the resolution. So basically 5.5-ish screen size. And so somewhere around that ballpark. So it would be smaller than the XR, and I think they could have all the other specs like the camera and internals. That could all be identical to the XR. It would just have a smaller size. And I think the XR is actually like bigger than most people need anyway. So
yeah,
I was surprised it didn't come in two sizes this year. So apparently we're not supposed to update to iOS 12.1.2. What's this about?
Well, it does not let you connect to the internet.
Oh, that sounds bad.
Yep, because you kind of need the internet. So it
Really?
basically, it looks like it's working. It looks like it's working totally fine. Like the bars are all there, but if you tried to connect to the internet, it wouldn't let you.
That's not fun. I don't think I'm on 12.1.2.
Yeah,
Let me check.
I'm ahead of them. So I'm ahead of that because I'm enrolled in their public beta. So I'm on.
Yeah, I was in the public beta for iOS 12, but I got off of it as soon as the actual main release of iOS 12 landed.
Ah,
Because I don't really need the new features in the release betas. I'm on 12.1.1, so I am avoiding this storm.
I am on 12.1.3. I'm ahead of it.
Interesting. I've seen a lot of coverage of the iOS 12.1.2 problems. I didn't know exactly what they were by our favorite Forbes contributor, Gordon Kelly, who, with great fervor, will cover basically any problem with Apple's software. And he always blows it all out of proportion. But, I mean, you do have to tell people about the problems. It's just like, come on, man. Don't make it seem like a bigger deal than it is.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, and speaking of some tech coverage that I'm not a fan of, let's talk about one of my internet pet peeves.
Oh, yeah.
That is Business Insider's headlines. So I tend to use Apple News on my iPhone to find news stories. And often I will see in my Apple News category feed that there's a news story from Business Insider. And let's just take a gander at one of those headlines. Let's see. This one's not related to Apple. Researchers believe a collision between the Milky Way and another galaxy could happen much sooner than expected, and it could launch our solar system in a new direction. That's the headline. The headline takes up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 lines on my phone screen.
Wow.
It takes up the entire screen. I can't see anything below the name of the author and the date of the article. So this seems like kind of a trivial thing, but I think in the age of mobile viewing of news, you kind of have to design for smaller screens and you have to write shorter headlines. Like, there's no reason the headline should be that long. It's a full sentence. It's a very carefully written sentence with adjectives placed in all the right places and all that. But a headline should be a lot simpler than that.
Yeah.
I'm definitely a fan of shorter headlines. I'm also a non-fan of clickbait headlines, which that's a whole separate discussion. Everyone hates clickbait, but
Yep.
everybody writes clickbait. The internet is a sad place. Welcome to 2019, guys. So it's 2019, as I mentioned a second ago, in case you didn't know. And that means that a certain Apple product missed its shipping date.
Yep.
Tell us about this Apple product.
The non-existent AirPower was not shipped at all.
The fabled AirPower.
And there was no updates on it whatsoever.
Yep, I think there's only one picture of it on the entire Apple website, and it's like a picture of the upcoming AirPods wireless charging case, still not released, sitting on top of the AirPower alongside an iPhone. So, yeah, nobody has any idea what's happening with it. And a lot of people are kind of like, well, who really needs AirPower anyway? And a lot of news sites are publishing articles about AirPower alternatives for much cheaper prices. But they're all forgetting one of the major selling points of AirPower, which is not just that it has 3 different spots where you can charge a device. It has something like 24 different spots. So what this means is that with its more than like 24 charging coils, it has no sweet spot. And the sweet spot, I'm not familiar with wireless charging because I don't have a wireless chargeable phone. But the sweet spot is basically the spot on the charging mat where your phone gets the best sort of reception from the charger. It's like a different place in it relative to a cell phone tower where you get better cell reception. And AirPower, because it has so many different chargers built in, removes the sweet spot. You can place your phone anywhere on it and it gets the equal amount of charge. So that seems like a pretty big selling point, and it's probably going to mean AirPower costs a significant amount more than the alternatives. Apparently one rumor was saying like $149, but I wouldn't be surprised if it went over $200, because it is a pretty remarkable technical achievement to fit like 21 wireless chargers in a single wireless charger.
Yeah.
But it also appears to be causing technical difficulties because like the mat is catching on fire and all that. It's opening portals into other dimensions. It's bad. The situation is not under control. So AirPower is not actually around, surprisingly. Apple missed the ship date. Everybody was making jokes about how like on December 31st, guys, I don't think AirPower is going to make the shipping date. It's missed it for real.
Yep.
There is one upcoming product, unannounced at all, that I'm interested in seeing, which is the iPhone XS smart battery case.
Oh, yeah.
And you have this in your show notes that you sent me, so describe this to me.
Well, some user on Reddit decided to cut up his smart battery case for an older iPhone and connect his iPhone XS to it, and it connected and worked and provided a little icon for that not wireless, that battery case.
I would buy a wireless battery case.
That would be
pretty
cool.
Great. I noticed this. I saw this circulating around the internet, and it's pretty comical that the little icon in the widget shows the XS case instead of the old 7 case. We actually already knew that a smart battery case for the XS was on the way because there was a leaked image of it in, I think buried somewhere in iOS, a separate icon. And it showed that there was one that looked like it was designed for the XS because of the shape and orientation of the camera cutout. So I'm interested in seeing this. I had the iPhone 7 smart battery case, and I still do. It's lying around somewhere. But the silicone was getting torn, and I got my battery replaced, so didn't need it anymore. Still don't. My iPhone is currently at 31% battery.
60%.
Again, near the end of the day. What'd you say?
60% at the end of the day. I did charge
This
it,
is
though.
not fair. So, iPhone XS smart battery case. Probably going to cost about $1,000.
Probably.
No, I hope it doesn't cost any more than the previous one, because that would be weird. I don't think it's going to offer any technical advantages or anything like that.
Probably not.
So another thing that you wrote down was something about Android apps sending data to Facebook. Before you describe it, I'm honestly shocked that this happened, because I've always thought Facebook was such an honest company. There's no reason that they should be suspected of doing anything that might be seen as unethical. Anyway, go ahead and explain this situation, because I have not seen this story.
Yeah, so I read a story earlier in the week saying that there was, I don't remember who did the survey, but they were checking some of the most popular Android apps and found out that, 61% of them sent data to Facebook without you knowing.
This is a situation where I would want to use the new woozy face emoji. I don't know if you've seen it before.
I have.
Okay, yeah. So you know what I'm talking about. My reaction to this is woozy face.
And they eventually, after studying more and more apps, discovered that 42.5% of most of the apps. Hold on, let me get the actual.
Like most of the apps on the Play
they
Store?
calculated that about 42% of apps on the Google Play Store send data to Facebook.
Wow, that's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So
another reason to use iOS.
Mm-hmm, yeah, it's worth mentioning something that I was reading about earlier in the week, I guess. A lot of people think Apple's products are overpriced, and it's true that sometimes, most of the time, they charge more for the hardware, the physical device, than it's actually worth.
Yeah.
But you make up like with a cheaper Android device, you pay the difference in your data, and the data is the true money that you're spending. So the question is whether you want to spend money or personal information on your phone. And when you buy into the iOS platform, then you have the confidence of knowing that your personal data isn't being used for purposes that you don't know about. But when you buy an Android phone, sure, you're paying less for it, but then the companies are getting what they think is worth the difference from you in your data. So the definition of overpriced is kind of flawed, in my opinion, because it doesn't take into account all the other factors such as personal information, privacy, and all that. And also the value that comes with everything else about the iOS ecosystem. Like, for example, I'm getting AirPods, and AirPods work a lot better with iPhones than they do with Android devices.
Yeah.
The user experience is much better. So, yeah, that's interesting, the whole apps sending data to Facebook. I should keep that in mind. I don't think Facebook's very trustworthy.
Yeah.
So tell me about Project Erasmus. Is that how you pronounce it? Erasmus?
I'm not
Or
sure.
Erasmus? I don't know.
Anyway.
Project something.
Anyway, there was an ex-Apple software engineer, and I'm going to totally butcher his last name, Bob Burrow, I think.
I think that's right.
I think that's
I
right.
think you got it.
Hopefully. Designed an application that uses light information from the selfie camera to change how user interface elements look,
Like shadows?
like shadows and things. So
Wow.
the app he had mimicked the old skeuomorphic style that iOS 6 and earlier used to demonstrate some of the ways that the light would interact with different elements on the screen.
That's interesting.
So as you rotate the device, you would get shadows and like switches and things. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
I'm curious to see if iOS's design language ever gets more depth, because right now iOS is pretty flat and there are some shadows, but generally it's a single dimensional look to it. Whereas with the skeuomorphism of like 2012 and before, things would look like they had more physical presence on the screen. I'm curious to see what the next stage of iOS's design language looks like. I think iOS 13 is going to significantly change the way that the iPhone and iPad function, like with the home screen refresh. But I have no idea how it'll change, whether it'll change how they look. That's interesting. I guess you'd call it like dynamic depth or dynamic lighting or something. I don't know.
I guess.
I'm not a marketing person. What do you think of... I actually don't know if you saw it. There was a story by the developer who... Not a story. There was a project by the developer of Coda, an iOS coding app, and he was conceptualizing an iOS menu bar in the style of macOS, but changed so that it looked and worked better on macOS. It was very interesting. So in Coda, you deal with like text files. So you'd have like an edit drop down, and you could tap on it and then drag down, like you can hover over items on macOS. I mean, I'm not doing it justice by trying to describe it, but we should put a link to it in the show notes.
Yeah, I'll have to look at that.
And I'll send it to you
That sounds
afterwards.
really interesting.
It looks very good, and I hope Apple adapts something similar to it across the entire iOS system, because it looks really good, and it seems like a really good mix of form and function.
Yeah, I'll have to look at that because I'm kind of skeptical.
Yeah.
I don't know how well that
Yeah,
that would
you
work.
should see it, and it might work better in apps. I don't know. I'm curious to see what the implementation would look like, at least.
Yeah.
That's sort of how I am on a trackpad for iOS as well.
Yeah.
I think that I'd want to see it before I make a decision, but I think that it's a good idea. I'm not sure. What do you think of the rumor, the thing that just won't die, the rumor that Touch ID is coming back to the iPhone?
Yeah. I think if they bring Touch ID back, that would be kind of strange because they kind of killed it off. But if they bring it back, they probably will keep it alongside Face ID, which would be pretty cool.
Yes.
So you could have two different methods of authentication, which would be
I
pretty
think-
cool.
Yeah, there are two facets to this discussion. One of them is whether Apple would bring back Touch ID. The other is whether they should.
Yeah.
Regarding whether they should, I think it would be good to have dual authentication. I also think it would just be plain cool to have a fingerprint sensor under the display. I think it would just be fun to use.
Yeah.
But as much as I like the idea, I still don't think Apple itself is convinced that Face ID really needs a complement like Touch ID. In their mind, Face ID is the superior method. They don't care about anything else anymore.
Yeah.
A lot of people back in like summer of 2017 were saying that Face ID had been the fallback from an in-display Touch ID sensor, but Apple disputed that claim. They said that they had been testing in-display fingerprint sensors, but as soon as they tested Face ID, they were like, oh yeah, this is so much better, we don't need Touch ID anymore. So whether you believe them, whether you think they're being honest is one thing, but I definitely would not be surprised if they're convinced that Face ID is better and that's all they need. So I'm very skeptical of rumors that claim that Touch ID is coming back, especially ones based on very poorly constructed circumstantial supply chain evidence that doesn't hold up if you apply simple logic to it. Like, there was one person who was saying that because Apple had shifted orders of its Touch ID sensors from a manufacturer who only made regular Touch ID sensors to a manufacturer who also made in-display Touch ID sensors in addition to regular ones, then therefore Apple was bringing back Touch ID under the display. So that doesn't prove anything because the manufacturer makes both regular sensors and in-display ones. So I think a lot of the reasoning behind this, as far as proving that Apple is planning to do it, is flawed. But I do agree with a lot of people that it would be nice to have both Touch ID and Face ID. Like I wouldn't be opposed to it.
Yeah.
But I think Apple is not convinced that it needs that.
Yeah, and I don't think it needs to be brought back because I don't really know how they would really implement it. Because on the current iPhone lineup, you swipe up to unlock.
You'd have to have like two different things going on at once.
Yeah, because Touch ID made sense in the sensor because you would touch it and then you could click it, and that
clicking and scanning were the same action.
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe you would maybe you would just touch your finger and then it would unlock without you swiping. I don't know. One thing that I've always thought was confusing to me about Face ID is why you can't just have it auto unlock and open as soon as you look at it. Because like iPhones with Touch ID have the option to open as soon as you touch your finger to the home button. You don't need to press it. You just need to verify that it's you. But with Face ID, you're required to do the swipe up, which to me seems like an unnecessary extra step.
To me, it makes sense though, because that's how you view your notifications.
Yeah. I was gonna say for some people it makes sense because they want to see the notifications. But like I can just open my iPhone 7 just by clicking the home button. It just takes me right past the notifications. Boom, I'm in. It's just nice to have the option of doing it faster, even if not everybody's gonna use that option.
Yeah.
Speaking of Face ID, though, I think Face ID is going to be much better and much less polarizing on Mac laptops and desktops than it has been on the iPhone. Because on the Mac, Touch ID is pretty cumbersome because you reach over to the keyboard, scan on a key. But with Face ID, the viewing angle, like I'm currently just facing right at the FaceTime camera on my MacBook Air, and that would just scan me. Boom, I'm in. I also think that with all this talk of the Mac getting some of iOS's design paradigms, I think one way that the Mac could stand to gain from in being inspired by iOS is in the unlocking process. I think it should have like a more modern, I guess, like lock screen, as opposed to the login screen, which is kind of weird looking. It just looks older than it needs to.
Oh yeah,
that's
definitely.
just a thing that they could improve.
Yeah.
Now let's talk again. I think we've talked about this twice already, about marzipan. So I don't think I've done a very good job articulating my views on the subject, and my views have somewhat changed since we last spoke about this after a lot of twittering. I like to use twittering as the verb form of Twitter. So let me see how to say this. Currently, the marzipan apps that Apple has presented to developers as an example of how good the API is, those apps are terrible. News and stocks and voice memos and home all try to cram iOS's design style into macOS, and that's never a good idea to mix cursor and touch interfaces.
Yeah.
So they require different things. With a mouse interface, you can and should be much more dense than you can and should with a touch interface. Touch targets must be much bigger than mouse targets.
Yeah.
So I think from step one, the idea that you should put an iPad app into a Mac window is a bad idea. It's not going to work. Now, the real question is whether Apple thinks that developers should be able to get away with just using the iPad apps in Mac Windows. And a lot of people are saying there's more to this story than just what happened last June. A lot of people think that when the API officially launches, it'll be much more robust with support for macOS's design style and better Windows and all that stuff.
Hopefully.
I don't think there's proof of that, but I also don't think there's proof against it. I think it could go either way.
Yeah.
If Apple does require developers to design specifically for the Mac rather than just copying and pasting over from iOS, as far as interfaces, then I think I would be closer to being on board. I still think that the majority of developers just aren't going to care. And like, if Netflix makes a Mac app, they're not going to change their interface from the iPad because they don't have to. People are just going to use the Netflix app no matter what.
Yeah.
So I think that marzipan is inherently going to cause or promote lazy development rather than deliberate development and deliberate design.
Yeah.
I don't think that means every marzipan app is going to be bad, because certainly there's going to be the option to improve your apps after you port them.
Yeah.
But I also am not sure whether Apple's going to improve its own apps like News and Stocks. Like, those are the two worst offenders because those are the ones that I use the most. And I don't. If Apple improves those apps itself, I think that sets a better example for developers than if it just leaves them the same. And my greatest fear is that Apple leaves its own apps the same, and we shouldn't expect developers to do a good job if Apple isn't even doing a good job.
Yeah.
So my hope is that Marzipan gets better. My worry is that it will not, and that it will stay the same. And my current opinion about the apps right now is that they are not good, and that style of app cannot be good because you shouldn't mix touch and cursor interfaces. So that's my 2 cents on it. So here, give me your 2 cents now.
Well, I think it could be a good idea if it's well implemented.
Yeah.
Like, I like the idea of like cross-platform cores in quotes. Like the underlying code, like to make it work, is the same, but like how you interact with it is slightly different.
Yeah.
So like if Apple like allowed you to just do like the underlying code, but then you just have to rewrite the user interface according to like their guidelines, I think that would be much better than what they're doing right now.
Yeah.
Because you would have to design it for Mac OS. I think they can make it easier with like having like options to like, if you just use like the stock UI elements, maybe having the Marzipan apps like use UIKit on Mac OS. So using that, so then like the tab bar on iOS automatically becomes whatever on Mac OS.
And it might be easier than I'm thinking to just have some automatic changes from the interfaces.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it comes down to 2 questions. First, what is a Mac app? And second, are Marzipan apps Mac apps?
Yeah.
I think most people agree that a Mac app needs to be optimized for cursor interaction.
Yeah.
Although there are some people who think that Apple should basically just give the Mac a touchscreen and try to merge the interface styles. I don't think that's ever going to work out. I don't think Apple will do that. But the question of whether Marzipan apps will turn out to be real Mac apps is what the dispute is over.
Yeah.
And we'll have to wait until June to find out, about 6 months.
Yep.
And so I'm hopeful, but I'm cautious.
Yeah.
So I'm not on the Marzipan train, but I'm not going to let it leave the station yet. So we talked about Marzipan. I think I did a better job talking about it this time than I did last time. So yeah, it's sort of a mixed bag for me. I still don't like the way the apps are now.
Yeah.
I think Apple should have branded them as betas, but I mean, they could get better.
Yeah.
So what's this Apple Music web player?
Yeah, I just stumbled across it this week sometime. Someone had created a online player for Apple Music. So you just log in and you can play Apple Music.
Hence the name, Apple Music Online Player.
Yeah.
So it's playapplemusic.com?
Yeah, I'm not
cool.
I don't know how much I trust it at the moment though with my Apple ID credentials.
Yeah, it
So,
seems kind of shady.
I would be cautious if you use this.
Does Apple have an official web interface for Apple Music?
It is not an official.
No, I mean,
official.
like, does Apple have an official version? Though?
Apple does not.
Okay. If they had an official one, I think that would be better.
Yeah, it kind of, the third-party one kind of resembles, like, Spotify and Google Play. Like, there's a resemblance there. Yeah.
Like if Spotify and Google Play had a kid?
Yep.
Interesting.
That's pretty much the user
check that
interface.
out. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to sign in with my Apple ID.
Yeah, I don't think I want to either.
So, what else has been happening in the world of technology? We have Apple's stock plummeting because of apparently low iPhone sales, a few other reasons like China's current economic turmoil. But I think that Apple can only be helped by having a cheaper iPhone. And when I say cheaper, I don't mean like cheap like iPhone SE cheap. I just mean the old flagship price.
Yeah.
And one objection to this is that it would cannibalize the sales of the XS. But I think currently the XS is being cannibalized by nothing. It's being cannibalized by users not upgrading at all. And a $649 iPhone would appeal to people who would not buy a XS at all. So Apple's choice is either give those people an iPhone or not make any money off of them. Doing a cheaper iPhone isn't going to cause sales of the XS to go down, because the XS is really only for people who really want the best of the best. So yeah, I don't think the cannibalization issue is a big deal. I also don't think that lowering prices is the only thing Apple should do. I think Apple should still make the iPhones better at the top end and at the low end, but I think consumers aren't going to pay more than $649 no matter what. A large chunk of them won't. What's your like iPhone wish list? What are the things that you'd want in an iPhone that would make it essentially perfect for you?
3D Touch. I use that a whole lot. That's probably why I wouldn't get a 10R. Good camera, good screen, fast unlocking,
So
battery
does
life.
that mean Face ID for you, or like better Face ID than right now, or does that also mean Touch ID?
Either one. I use Touch ID because I have a 6S, and it works fine for me. And I've never actually tried Face ID before.
Have you done it in stores?
No.
Ooh,
No, actually,
I
get,
should.
like-
yeah, it's interesting.
yeah, I mess around with the hardware too much and like other software elements that I don't actually try out the unlocking features.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely battery life is a big thing. Yeah, but that would probably be my ultimate iPhone.
I think so. So basically, I'm trying to describe a perfect iPhone, and I think a perfect iPhone would have no notch, but every other bezel width would be the same, because all the other bezels are perfect for being held in the hand,
Yeah.
and anything smaller would just be difficult to hold and awkward. So no notch, no camera bump, ideally. It would have I don't even know if I would want 3 cameras. It just, I guess the more cameras the better, but eventually you get to the point where it's aesthetically less good looking. So, then ProMotion. I really want to see ProMotion on iPhones.
Oh yeah, I forgot
120
about
hertz
that.
refresh
I would
rate.
add that to the list. Mm-hmm. And to Mac, if possible.
Some people want a glowing Apple logo, but
Eh,
like
Not
it's weird
really.
because most people use cases. Oh, I guess I would want the perfect iPhone to be indestructible. That's one thing.
Oh, yeah.
So I wouldn't need a case. So yes, glowing Apple logo.
USB-C. I would add
And
that.
I know there were more things. I guess infinite battery life would be great. Better battery life, obviously.
Yeah.
From a design perspective, I think the thickness is perfect. I don't know if I would want it any thinner, because it would just get difficult to hold and
Yeah.
bendier, as the iPads prove. I guess flat edges would look nice, like
Yeah.
in the style of the iPad Pros.
Yeah, because I like the 5.
USB-C. I guess I'm sure there are more things. I'm just having trouble thinking of them right now. But those are basically my top things. I'm very excited for the day when the notch is finally replaced by in-display sensors. I think
Yeah.
that'll be nice.
That'll be so cool.
When do you think that'll happen?
Probably, definitely not this year. I'm not expecting it this year.
Yeah, definitely.
Very rare chance next year. I don't expect that either. Maybe the year after, though. So 2020? No, 2021.
No. It's 2019,
Yeah,
man.
I forgot about that.
We are in 2019. I think that does sound about right. I think 2020 is going to be the next year the design is radically changed, to use the clickbaity term. So I think this year's iPhones are going to look pretty similar to the 2018 models. I think they'll hopefully have a smaller version of the XR at a $649 price. I think they'll learn their lesson from the low performance this quarter.
Yeah,
And then I think
hopefully.
2020 is going to be more of a big design change. I think the notch might go away. It'll obviously have 5G. Well, now I guess not obviously, but yeah, I shouldn't have said obviously. I think it'll have 5G. I like eventually we're going to hit the point where the iPhone's design changes are so incremental that we've essentially reached the perfect iPhone, and it'll be more performance improvements, more evolutionary than revolutionary. I don't think that we've hit that point yet. I don't think we'll hit it for a few more years because there are definitely some improvements to be made. But eventually we're going to have to deal with the fact that the smartphone is no longer changing that much and we have to move on to the next thing. When do you think, well, first of all, do you think like AR glasses are going to be the next major computing device that changes how our lives work?
I think that would be cool. It's probable. I'm not really sure what I think of them yet. I'd probably have to use them
Yeah, same.
because HoloLens is really like the only sort of.
Google Glass?
Yeah, well, that's kind of dead.
Yeah, yeah, it's dead. But, I mean, it's a predecessor, sort of.
Yeah.
I'm very curious about how interaction with elements in a virtual environment like that will work. Would
Yeah.
you use hand gestures? Would you be able to sense the distance that your hands are from the glasses?
Yeah.
Would you use your eyes? I don't know how it would work with your eyes.
Yeah. Google's actually working on a patent for it's like
For hand wave gestures?
yeah,
Yeah,
with,
I think
like,
I saw that.
sound
Yeah,
and
instead of
vibrations.
physical buttons. Yeah, I think AR glasses are going to be the next major product category that everybody wants to get in on and that everybody owns. The Mac was first released in 1984, and then the iPod was in 2001, 17 years after. And then the iPhone was 6 years after that, and the iPad was 3 years after that. And the iPhone has been around for 12 years now, and there's
Wow.
been no major disruptive thing that has happened. So it's probably on the tail end of its lifespan as the big thing that everybody cares about. I think probably in 2020 is when Apple glasses are going to be announced, maybe 2021. But I think within a couple decades after that, they will become the main thing that is the focus of the technology world.
Yeah.
But I don't think the smartphone's going to die for a good bit of time after that.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, even though the smartphone has supplanted the PC as the essential element to everybody's tech lives, the Mac is still around, the PC is still around.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going anywhere for the next 10 years or so.
So AR
So
might
I
be
think the
a
smart- the
companion
smartphone-
to your phone for a while.
So I think AR is going to be the next major thing, but only once it is in its own standalone hardware like glasses.
Yeah.
And then when that happens, once they've gotten the interface interaction types nailed down, then I think it'll go mainstream. Once its purpose and function are clear, I think people are going to be interested. But I think it'll be a while before its market share is like higher than the iPhones or whatever.
Yeah.
It's too far out to predict. When do you think Apple glasses are launching?
Maybe next year. That would be pretty cool to see.
Next year. I was thinking we were in 2018 still. And 2020 is next year.
Yeah, I'm thinking
Pretty
2020.
I was thinking, wait, you mean 2019? I remembered, this is 2018. This is not 2018. Oh, darn it. I'm just getting my years mixed up. Well, it can only get better from here.
Yeah. 2020 makes sense for glasses, though.
Yeah. So finally, let's talk about something that I was testing myself on earlier today. How many words per minute do you type?
About 30 to 35 on the computer with a good keyboard that's like not mushy.
Cool.
With typos.
Yeah.
iOS, though, I'm about 20 with weird autocorrect issues.
Oh yeah, I forgot to test myself on iOS.
Yeah.
On macOS, I used my Microsoft Sculpt ergonomic keyboard is the keyboard that I use. It's from a few generations back in their like hardware style or whatever. It's very nice. I like it a lot. And I was very shocked to find that I tested at 91 words per minute on my first try. And on my second try, I got 86. And then the third time, I got, I think 90 or 92.
I think it was 92.
Okay. Oh,
If
yeah,
I
yeah, because I
remember
was telling you
correctly.
about
I
it.
think you told
All
me.
right, yeah, I think it was 92 the third time. So usually it fluctuates a lot depending on how much I'm screwing up and how hard I'm trying. I usually get between like 65 and I guess 90, but generally it's probably in 70 to 80, that range. But it also varies greatly when I'm in like real world usage because I tend to pause for a second to think of what my next word should be. But when I know what I'm typing, when I know what my full sentence is, then I'm faster. That's just a fun thing to test.
Yeah.
So I think we've reached a good stopping point. We
Yeah.
covered the last week of news. We actually got a recording done this week.
Yeah.
It's not going to be a month-long gap between episodes, I hope. This has been a good talk. I will see you next week, Jason.
Yeah. See you.